Whether you're looking for answers to specific life questions or seeking to become the best version of you possible, welcome to the Mental Breakdown and Psychreg podcast, where we offer insight, information, and strategies based upon research and years of practice as clinical psychologists. So sit back, have a listen, and get connected with our hosts, Dr. Berney Wilkinson and Dr. Richard Marshall. Welcome back. Today, well, Richard, we don't even have an article to review today. This is just something, this is an issue that we've been talking about. Maybe we should write an article about it.
We could.
We should. We will. I've already started one, actually. So that was a little primer for that. But surprise.
It's called, no, never mind.
So the topic we're going to talk about today is our tendency to cast blame.
Because this is all in keeping with our theme this week.
Right.
Which is, what do we do about anxiety?
Right.
What is it?
Mm-hmm.
What do we do about it?
Right.
And today is sort of what you shouldn't do about it.
Right. It's one of those things that we do that we shouldn't do.
It is a natural tendency that we all have, but we have to fight the urge to exercise this.
Right. We hear repeatedly on a, if not hourly, certainly a daily basis with some of the folks that we work with, is some discussion of one way or another to talk about whose fault is it, who should we blame for the things that we're seeing. So what happens is we experience some form of stress. Something happens that causes us a little bit of distress, and our immediate response, maladaptive response, is to figure out whose fault it is.
Right. I worked in a clinic one time, and it was sort of a, not really a toxic environment, but it wasn't, but it was a difficult culture that had been created. And it was, you always had the feeling that administrators were looking over your shoulder.
Right.
And there was this joke that went around that the first, if you ever encountered a problem, the first step was search for the guilty.
Right.
I mean, that was the first, always, search for the guilty. Who do we blame for this? And that's kind of what this falls under, is you pull the trigger and say, whose fault is it?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. So what we want to talk about with this is that when we have that tendency, when we attempt to initially figure out who the culprit is,
to assign blame, right?
The main problem with it, well, there's lots of problems with it. One problem is that there's not always somebody to blame. Sometimes it's just the way that it is.
That's right.
But the other problem with it, and how it relates to the topic of this week, is that while we're doing that, we're neglecting a search for the solution.
Right.
We're not figuring out how to solve the problem. Instead, we're focusing, in sometimes futile attempts, to figure out whose fault it is. And it doesn't matter.
Right.
If there is somebody to blame, it doesn't matter. And sometimes there's just not somebody to blame.
That's
so
right.
It wouldn't matter.
Right.
So instead of figuring out whose fault it is, let's figure out how to solve the problem. And that will relieve our stress. We think, and we hear this, we've read this in, certainly in various articles, but we've even heard people, sort of anecdotal interviews and reports where, we figure out who the culprit is of some massive crime, a murder or some horrific event. We figure out who it is, and we think, when justice is done, we will feel some relief. And no. We don't. What was his name? With O.J. Simpson, that family. I forgot his name. It was Nicole Brown.
Goodman. Ronald Goodman.
Yeah. Remember, his parents talked about that. They kept thinking, when justice prevails.
It's finally done.
And no, they did not.
They didn't feel better.
They didn't feel much better, even though, there was some resolution civilly, at least. There was no relief in that stress. And so instead of looking to blame, we really need to solve the problem.
That's right. Because if you blame somebody else, if you want to affix blame on another person, that isn't really constructive.
Right.
Okay. Even if you, as you say, even if you say this person made the mistake,
Right.
that doesn't fix anything.
Right.
On the other hand, if you blame yourself, then it turns you into a martyr or a victim
Right.
or, oh, woe is me. So it just sort of doesn't solve any problem.
Right.
Whether the blame is on somebody else or on you, go on to step 2. It's not going to do any good dwelling on whose fault it is. Go on to step 2 and start looking for a solution. How do I fix the problem?
Right. Yeah. It all has to do with locus of control. If we see ourselves as having the ability, the control, the adequacy to solve our problems and to fix what's going on and that's creating issues, when we feel that we have the ability to do that, well, then we recognize that it doesn't matter whose fault it is.
That's right. We see this all the time. We see it with in relationships, with couples. We also see it with parents and children.
Right.
We see this play itself out, that there is some stress in the marriage, and the partners try to figure out whose fault it is.
Right.
This is your fault that it's happening.
Right.
No, it's your fault that it's happening. Or we have teenager struggles. That the parents will come and say, no, it's his fault. He's doing this thing. Okay. It doesn't get us anywhere.
Right.
So, okay, fine. Now what do we do?
Yeah. Well, we're doing it with kids now anyways. Well, we have all these problems in schools now because, well, it's the parents' fault. Because if the parents were doing this and this, we have all these problems in school because the curriculum, if the schools were doing, it's the school's fault. They're doing this. It's the teacher's fault. It's
the
this
administration.
They
don't have this, and they don't have rules, and they don't have control, and they don't have consequences.
Right.
It's always this search for the guilty.
Right.
Which doesn't buy us anything.
Right. Because the answer is yes. In some situations, it's all of their fault.
It's probably everybody contributing to it.
But instead of focusing on that, let's focus on figuring out how to solve the problem.
Right.
And that is what's going to relieve our stress. Solving the problem is going to relieve our stress. Identifying the guilty is not.
No.
It doesn't do anything for us.
We see this in divorce cases all the time. That's the classic example where couples get into this adversarial relationship during a divorce, and they blame each other.
Right.
But they're both responsible. Each person has contributed to this problem.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
invariably the case.
Yeah, absolutely. So this short message for today is, instead of figuring out who's to blame, what's to blame, or who can we focus the spotlight on to just chastise or take to trial.
It takes energy and effort to solve life's problems.
Right.
This is a waste of energy.
Right.
Okay. Even if you do decide that it's somebody's fault, fine. It's that person's fault. You still have to go on to the next step. So save your energy for the hard work that has to be done to solve the problem, rather than to spend it time, energy, and effort trying to figure out whose fault it is.
Absolutely.
Right.
So, all right. 2 announcements very quickly before we wrap up today. Remember our Lumi contest that's going on right now for our UK listeners. Click in the show notes. You will find the link that gives you all of the terms and conditions and the things that you can do. It's a very quick process. It'll only take you a couple minutes. You can register to win a Lumi body clock, and which is, I think it's values at around 50 to 60 pounds, which is fantastic. The Lumi body clocks are very cool because it lets you wake up with light, which is what our body's supposed to do.
Right.
And so check that out. Register to win that. And if you do win it, whoever it is that wins it, if you do win it, I would love to hear how it works for you.
I don't know if it's working.
Because it looks. We've seen some research about that type of mechanism for waking up in the morning and getting your body going, and it's all very good stuff. So I'd love to hear how it works for you. So the second announcement is that this podcast is going out on May 23rd, which means that tomorrow night, May 24th, that's Wednesday night, May 24th, at 6:30 p.m., we will be doing our next episode of our 13 Reasons Why Examined podcast live YouTube events. And so we will be live on YouTube at 6:30 p.m. on May 24th to talk about tape 4, which is episodes 7 and 8 from the Netflix program. And we're really looking forward to talking with you all about that, because there's some really good, we're starting to really get into the good stuff.
Right. And it continues to be a topic of discussion among students, teachers, and parents. So it still is a top, and it's going to be
It's going to do season 2.
another season of the show. So stay tuned, tune in, and let us know what you think. We'd love to have your thoughts on this issue, on this matter.
So we'll be posting the links to the to that through our Twitter account and as well as on Facebook. But also, if you click on the little eye at the top corner of your YouTube screen, if you're watching this on YouTube, there will be a link there as well, so that'll take you right to it. So, all right, that is it for today. That's it.
That's it. That's good.
Have a great day. Stay happy, stay healthy, and forget to be afraid.